The Penn State Nittany Lions are going to beat the West Virginia Mountaineers. It's just a matter of by how much.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making this your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and this is essentially a pseudo Locked On crossover. We don't have a Locked On Mountaineers, but I think I know the person that will be able to help us do justice for that, and that is Keenan Cummings over at West Virginia Rivals, publisher, and does such incredible work over there. We're going to get the full scouting report, how Penn State matches up with the Mountaineers in a actual game preview. Yes, college football is finally back. Keenan, let's start with just that, how West Virginia matches up with Penn State from the Mountaineers side of things. Before we get to that, download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Keenan, Penn State and West Virginia, I mean, this is a 20-point spread, but I'm pretty sure if you ask Mountaineer fans, especially Pat McAfee, who's probably one of the biggest Mountaineer fans, that West Virginia does in fact have we're sitting back from Penn State side of things. It's like, well, 20, that's not high enough. The spread's not high enough. From West Virginia's point of view, how do the Mountaineers match up with the Nittany Lions?
This is not going to be an easy game. I don't think anybody that is either covering West Virginia, that follows West Virginia, supports West Virginia, thinks that West Virginia is definitely going to go into Penn State and win this football game. You know, if they win this game, that's a big if, they have to have a lot of things go right, as you would expect playing the number 7 team in the country. I think what West Virginia would like to do, they've got some mobile quarterbacks. It's a lot different than how the offense has looked the past couple years. That brings a new element. They can do some things with the quarterback run game, but this team wants to run the football. They want to be able to establish up front. They have a very good offensive line, a lot of experience. I think it's 132 combined starts, up front. That's a lot of experience in today's college football with the transfer portal and all the turnover and attrition that really happens every year now. You build teams from year to year. Really. So I think that West Virginia wants to run the football, but they went out and got a lot of different receivers, some guys that can do different things. They have a tight end, a big pass catching tight end. They want to be able, when they throw the ball, to be effective doing it, because last year when West Virginia could run the football, they never really were able to hit those big pass plays down the field that were there because teams were cheating up trying to stop the run. They weren't able to really do that with consistency. So that was something they focused on. I think if West Virginia is going to win this football game, though, throw the matchups out the board. If you look at it on paper, unfortunately, I can't do it this week because these two teams refuse to release a depth chart. I typically look at the talent level, from a Rivals perspective, since I work for Rivals, where guys were rated. And I would think this would be lopsided in Penn State's favor. I don't think we're fooling anybody by saying that. But I think, West Virginia comes in with a quiet confidence in a sense. Not that they're going to win this game. I mean, they might believe that. But I think that West Virginia is a better football team. At least they believe that. Than a lot of people in the media and a lot of people from outside the program.
Yeah, I completely agree, Keenan. I think that West Virginia, I've been saying this all along since the summer, whether that's on social media, whether that's on this podcast, that West Virginia is not given enough credit. And I think that where Neal Brown is at the stage at this point with the Mountaineers, right? 5th year, the hot seat has always been the discussion. Is this the year to do it? I don't know what the West Virginia athletic department is thinking here, but if Neal Brown is starting to feel the heat, then he's going to do things that coaches who normally feel the heat would do. I mean, this is an iconic game. Okay, regardless of the matchup, I mean, this has history to it. James Franklin and Neal Brown shouldn't look at this like, well, it's just to give the vintage fans what they want. No, this has recruiting implications. This has regional implications as far as the respect of both programs. And Neal Brown, when you're backed into a corner as far as where your career splits at the fork, I feel like you're going to see 4th down opportunities where you normally wouldn't. Like I could see West Virginia going for it on like a 4th and 2 inside of the 35 in the Mountaineer territory. Like I feel like there's going to be a little bit of desperation even in week 1 from Neal Brown's decision-making, especially since he's going to be calling plays this year for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, and really that's not that crazy. West Virginia had one instance last year that really was kind of shocking. They didn't go for it. It's pretty famous now in West Virginia circles against Pitt. And they needed 6 inches to get a first down and decided to punt the ball.
With the run game that you have, and you had it last year too.
Yes, and they had ran the ball well in that game. But after that, West Virginia went for a lot of fourth downs. He's a big analytical guy, likes to play the numbers. Okay. But I do agree with you in this game. In a sense, there's not really a lot for West Virginia to lose. They're 20.5-point dogs. They're going into a hostile environment. Nobody expects West Virginia to win this game. So, yeah, I think they're going to throw some wrinkles. I think they're going to do some things because, in order to stay in a football game like this, when it's talent on talent, and I don't think anyone's going to argue that Penn State isn't the more talented football team on paper, you got to find some ways to do some things a little outside the box. I agree with you 100%. I think you could see West Virginia try to air it out a little bit more at times. This is a team that wants to throw the football. Don't be surprised to see, some passes the tight end up the seam, trying to hit some of those deep play action looks, some things to spark things. And I think that as long as West Virginia doesn't beat itself, which they've really struggled with for whatever reason under Neal Brown, untimely penalties. I don't know if there's a such thing as a timely one, but untimely penalties, turnovers, just killing themselves in critical situations. If they can avoid that and run the football, they could make this thing interesting. But that's a lot. You got, this is year 5 for Neal Brown. You mentioned his situation. The seat's definitely getting hotter. The fan base is grumbling and louder and louder and louder. Neal understands that. It's something he said all offseason. He knows he needs to win. So he's cognizant of what he needs to do. The administration is. I'm interested to see how that plays into the game plan because I do think they'll have some wrinkles.
Quickly, I'm going to get to Penn State's point of view of how they should view the Mountaineers, how they are, right? There's what the fan base thinks and then what the players and the coaches see. But this is what you should expect from West Virginia if you're Penn State's at least game planning for it, right? Run first, second, maybe even third down. Keenan, you said that they're probably going to do some things. A wrinkle is airing it out. Like I expect some play action, some good safe throws for a Garrett Greene because Penn State is going to be looking for the turnover, right? You don't just return one of the top cornerbacks in the country, one who might be the first cornerback selected in next year's draft in Kalen King and say, all right, let's break out the air raid in week 1 of the season. I think that the Mountaineers are going to stick to their guns. They're going to run the football. They do. I firmly believe Penn State and West Virginia both have top 15, maybe even top 10 offensive lines in the entire nation. I think that's crazy to say for Penn State. But for West Virginia, they've always been the outlier in the Big 12 because the Big 12 likes to do the air raid, spread offense. And defensively, I don't know that the Mountaineers are going to be able to match up with what Penn State wants to do because it's going to be, and I've said this on your show, I was a guest on your show, that Penn State's going to give West Virginia a taste of its own medicine. The ground and pound with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. I don't think that we need to see the Drew Allar show just yet. This is a matter of taking care of business week 1, seeing what kind of team identity it is. And the ground game's so much better. And I think Penn State really focused its resources and energy on trying to improve the run defense because a year ago, if Penn State and West Virginia played, especially 2 years ago, I don't know. I feel like the Mountaineers are kind of like a situation. I'm not saying they're exactly like Illinois with Brett Bielema, but they have that same kind of feel. They have the same kind of vibe. So last season, the year, and in 2021, this is not a good matchup for Penn State. But now in 2023, it's a much better matchup for Penn State and one that they can handle.
Yeah, I think that the one thing I will say is the Big 12 now, it's got that air raid vibe. A lot of people think back 10 years ago. There are a lot of teams in the Big 12 now that want to run the football. Baylor, Baylor, you look at Kansas State, Oklahoma State. It's different. There's a better defense in the league right now. I think it was 2 years ago, some of the top defenses in the country were in the Big 12, and they proved it in bowl season too. So it's changed a little bit. I think it helps West Virginia defending the run that they're going to be going against their running backs because this is a team that can go 4 deep at running back, and they feel really good. They got big running backs too. C.J. Donaldson is, I'm sure by now most Penn State fans have heard the story. He was a converted tight end that had never played running back in his entire
career. I remember that.
And actually did pretty well until he got hurt. And they've got some other guys too. But I think it's going to be – I think that's the matchup of the game on both sides of the ball. It's obvious to me. Can West Virginia stop Penn State's run, and how effectively does Penn State stop West Virginia's run? Because I think both these teams, like you said, I don't think they're going to put a lot of pressure on their quarterback. They don't really want to do that. Why would you do that if you don't have to? And I think it's a maturation process. And with Garrett Greene, yes, he's playing good football right now. By all indications, talking to people, he's playing. He's made steps. He always had talent, to run around and create some things, do some things. He's getting up to the level up here that's starting to click. Now, how does that translate in a game against another team? That's always a big step. Doing it in practice is one thing. Some people are practice players forever. In baseball, they call them quad 4 player, or, you know what I mean? Like guys that can never make it to the majors. Yeah. So I think that's going to be the storyline to me. How does each quarterback fare when they are put in those situations, and which team can run the football? Because everyone looks at the hardest part anymore about handicapping teams, especially a team you don't cover. It's hard enough if you cover the team daily, is with so much movement, so much transfers, so much attrition. Yeah. Everybody just looks at what you returned from last year and don't really factor in the transfers, how they fit, what it means to change those type of bodies. So I think West Virginia's defense is going to be a lot better than people give it credit for on paper right now. How good is the question to me?
It is Locked On Nittany Lions. We are previewing Penn State and West Virginia Saturday, September 2nd, 7:30 under the lights and broadcasted on NBC. First time NBC's calling a game inside of Beaver Stadium, and Todd Blackledge is coming back. He's going to be broadcasting. He's going to be a part of the team, and it's going to be interesting because he was 3-0 against the Mountaineers, so there's a little bit of history and probably a good homecoming for the former Penn State quarterback, national champion as well. Now, Keenan, I want to start scouting the Mountaineers. Before we get to that, let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is Gametime. Gametime, buying tickets to your favorite events should never be stressful. Gametime gets that. That's why they became a fast and easy way to buy tickets for everything: sports, music, comedy, theater, everything near you. Some of the things that I like about the Gametime app experience, because I have used Gametime to buy tickets to sporting events, the flash deals and last minute tickets. Okay, that's my favorite part of it, is the fact that when you go into the Gametime app, you can see special deals from Gametime to get discounts on your tickets, and then last minute, right? If you're looking for a way to get into the game, you weren't planning all along, and then all of a sudden you wanted to go to that sporting event or anything that you wanted to go to, and you can get those tickets last minute. Easy to find and buy those tickets for your events near you. And then on top of that, you also get the chance to see the seats for where you want to sit. So you get images, you get to view, rather than guessing and buying and saying, okay, am I going to like this point of view at an event? You get to see it right on the Gametime app. So Gametime has those last second deals, as I mentioned. Get those exclusive flash deals on football, basketball, baseball, comedy, theater, near you, you name it. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. Penn State rivals, they're going to have previews and predictions as well for Penn State and West Virginia. So see who's going to be the most accurate when it comes to Saturday's contest, and this one going up on Friday. So you'll have the preview to fully digest everything that we're going to talk about here between the Mountaineers and the Nittany Lions. So Keenan, I want to know a little more about this West Virginia team. You started to talk about some of the players, okay? So I won't necessarily ask about CJ Donaldson, a Garrett Greene, who I know is a dual threat quarterback. I would probably lean him more to a game manager rather than a game changer. I like the offensive line. Wide receiver, Caden Prather ended up transferring out to Maryland. And then Penn State and West Virginia got into a little bit of a recruiting battle in the transfer portal when Devin Carter decided to verbally commit to the Nittany Lions. And then ultimately, I have no idea what happened, but ultimately flipped to the Mountaineers. So what is the wide receiver situation like for the Mountaineers? If you feel confident enough to say that West Virginia is going to pass, but how successful are they going to be with that passing attack?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for West Virginia, and it kind of speaks back to what I was talking about on the defensive side, there's just so much change. I think they lost something like 89% of the receptions, 87% of the yards. I mean, it's a lot of turnover. All four of their top receivers from last year are gone. I don't know if that's necessarily a terrible thing. You know, West Virginia wasn't a very good passing team last year. They struggled in a lot of areas in that department. Now, Devin Carter, he's going to be counted on. He's a guy that obviously Penn State liked him a lot. He's a good player. Yeah. He's a guy that's had a lot of experience, not necessarily the production you'd want to see. Now, last season at NC State, that was a train wreck with quarterback, but he's been a complimentary piece. I think West Virginia saw that there was room for more. There was an opportunity for him to be more of a guy in Morgantown. And I think in spring practice and fall camp, he kind of proved that. He looked the part. He was a consistent guy. He's a big outside receiver, kind of in the mold of a guy they had last year in Bryce Ford Wheaton, if you caught any West Virginia football games. Very similar in size. I would say speed, pretty similar as well. They actually know each other, both from North Carolina. So you got him. Cortez Braham's another wide receiver that played a little bit last year, but they expect to take a big leap now in his second year from junior college. Typically, if you're bringing in guys from junior college, the first year is you get your feet wet a little bit. The second year, you're typically a different player. They're expecting that type of growth. They've got a bunch of other names. You can put a bunch of names in a hat and kind of shake them and pull them out right now. I think they feel confident with 7 to 8 guys, and you could see all of them. There's a couple freshmen, Traylon Ray and Rodney Gallagher, who Penn State recruited. Yeah. They're going to play. I don't know how much. Gallagher is more of an inside guy. Ray's an outside guy. You have some other guys on the roster that they like. E.J. Horton, a transfer, a speed guy from Marshall that can really run. He's got to prove it. He can run. Jeremiah Aaron, same thing as Braham last year. Played a little bit, but they're expecting more out of him. And a homegrown guy in Preston Fox. He's one of those guys in the spring game that just comes up with catches. The guy just makes fantastic plays every time he's in there, but can't really seem to get a lot of time. I think they're going to give him a fair shake. Jarrell Williams is another guy that they'll probably count on. So they've got a lot of names. Yeah. And I asked Neal this actually in his press conference this week. Do you feel comfortable with your wide receiver position? Yeah. And he said, yeah, I mean, I do. I feel a lot better than I did, coming into this thing. I think we addressed the position, but now it's about actually proving it. Talk is cheap. My dad always says talk is cheap. It takes money to buy whiskey. And I think that West Virginia needs to go out and prove that this group is ready to be what people think it could be. I don't think this is going to be the greatest show on turf Rams or anything. Not going to be throwing the ball around, but I do think they could be effective when they do throw the football. And I would bunch in tight end Cole Taylor, a transfer from LSU. They want to use him in the passing game too. He's a 6'7", long, lanky guy that can really catch the football.
I'm glad you brought up tight ends for West Virginia. I'm going to flip it back to Penn State side of things because the Mountaineers have had a lot of trouble covering tight ends, and Penn State's got 2 future NFL players in Theo Johnson, who could arguably be maybe the first tight end taken in next year's draft. I know that he's starting to rise up draft boards. The scouts are seeing that a 6'6", 260-pound athlete runs and catches the football the way he does. Not the best blocker in the world, but he has a future in the NFL. And then Tyler Warren described as the best kept secret by CBS Sports. So with the problems that the Mountaineers had covering tight ends, do you think, are you almost expecting that Penn State is just going to make sure that Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren are nightmare matchups for the Mountaineer defense? How do you game plan for that?
Yeah, I think they'll try to target. That's something that West Virginia tried to work on in the offseason, really upgrade their safety position. Aubrey Burks returned. They feel good about that. They went out and got really one of the better guys available at the other safety spot, and Anthony Wilson. Had 102 tackles last year, pretty solid in coverage. They've worked with their linebackers on flexibility. That was a big issue last year. It seems like at times the linebackers, the safeties, and corners, you put them in a blender when it comes to coverage. They just were lost a lot of times. It really hasn't been the staple of a Jordan Leslie defense since he took over. They've been pretty solid in the coverage department. Pretty solid defensively. A couple years ago, very good defensively. So yeah, I think that it's going to be a challenge. You mentioned 6'6", 240 and can run. Some of the best that's what the NFL is looking for. So that's going to be a challenge no matter who's out there. But I do think that is going to be an area that's tested, especially in play action type situations, because that's where West Virginia's really kind of let the tight end loose up the seam at times, getting sucked down and letting them go over.
And then the other part of the Mountaineers defense, I mean, some Penn State fans should remember him. Lance Dixon was one of the biggest high-profile commits that Penn State got a few years back. It's been quite some time. And then I didn't think that I thought he was going to land at Michigan. He ultimately landed at West Virginia. What's his progress been like? He hasn't really become necessarily a household name. It seems like he's going to be that jack of all trades defender, a do-it-all defender where he can line up anywhere and they're going to have different assignments for him. But what can Penn State fans expect now that he's kind of returning to where he began things in his college career? What kind of impact on defense will he have, and the linebackers as a whole for the Mountaineers, trying to stop that ground game?
Yeah, it's time for Lance. Neal has
Okay.
said as much. Like, it's time for him to kind of take that next step. He showed flashes at the end of his first year at West Virginia that you thought, man, this guy has a chance to be really special.
Okay.
And then last year struggled with injury and some other things, just never really matched that level of play that he had in the bowl game, especially towards the end in the bowl game in 2021. He looked like he was primed for big, big things. It never really came together. Has played really well down the stretch in fall camp. Was a guy that was highlighted by Neal. They think he has a chance to be that guy. You look at the guy physically, he's got it all. I mean, there's no excuse why he cannot go out there and play. So I think they're depending on him. Lee Koba's the man at linebacker for West Virginia. He's their Mike. Played last year some. Junior college guy. He had good numbers, but he struggled earlier in the year, especially in coverage towards the end. Really made a lot of strides. I think that they're expecting him to be that guy. The biggest question mark on this defense by far is the guy beside Lee, whoever that's going to be. They haven't named a starter yet. There's still several guys battling for that. Don't be surprised to see multiple people get that job and see if one of them can get a hot hand. That's the question mark. Trey Lathan, Tyreek Austin Cave, Gyro Fevers. There are a lot of names there. Ben Cutter, even a freshman. But whoever takes that, they have to have that person establish themselves, or at least a group establish themselves, because if I was taking a weak link right now, it's right there, because there's too many question marks.
Penn State, West Virginia. I feel like we got a good synopsis of what the Mountaineers are going to try to do in Beaver Stadium. Keenan, I want to get your predictions and how you expect this game to flow. And we really appreciate you tuning in for this one on Locked On Nittany Lions. There's something exciting coming to the Locked On Podcast Network. And with college football season amping up, that means coverage is amping up as well. And Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On are proud to be presenting each and every Friday, going in depth from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. live on Fridays on every Locked On College YouTube channel. So that includes this one, Locked On College Football Live. It's going to cover college football implications, the conference rivalry games, go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Locked On College Football Live every Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on any of the Locked On College YouTube channels. You won't want to miss it. And in this final segment, let's get our predictions, what everyone's been waiting for, to see if West Virginia can do the unthinkable here. Country roads take us home. Can they pull off the upset? I've been a firm believer that Penn State, they have been the favorite. They should have always been the favorite. There's no vulnerable spots for West Virginia to try to take advantage of a Penn State team. Sure, some people are going to say that, oh, well, it's an inexperienced quarterback. But when you look at Penn State, and this isn't just any inexperienced quarterback, okay? We know what Drew Allar is. He was the top quarterback according to 24/7. He was a consensus top 3 in the nation. He was a 5-star and somebody that NFL scouts are getting very excited for. So he's not going to have any lapses in this game. But what Penn State has going into the season as a whole, the consistency, okay? There's no change at offensive coordinator. Mike Yursich is back. Manny Diaz is back. Stacey Collins on the special teams is back. You just had 2 position coaches change in Marcus Hagans and Deion Barnes. And Deion Barnes was already a part of the staff. So the only outsider was Hagans, and it was for the better. I mean, kind of part of the reason that Devin Carter ultimately went to the Mountaineers was there was a problem with the wide receiver coach. And I'm not here to comment on what Taylor Stubblefield did or didn't do, but wasn't able to win some of those recruiting battles in the transfer portal. Penn State said, okay is not okay enough. We got to get to good. We have to get to great. And that's why they came in. But the bottom line is that Penn State took its base and made it even better. So they're going to have a more effective ground game. Frankly, I just don't think that West Virginia is going to be able to keep up with Penn State. So if West Virginia does try to shrink the game, uses that ground game to move the football down, maybe they kick a field goal here and there early in the game and it's close. But then Penn State, they can open up the floodgates if they want to. Drew Allar has the arm. I don't think they want to, but they will if they have to. My score is going to be 35-13. I don't think people are factoring in enough. The clock rule changes, that the clock does not stop after first downs. So now both teams are going to lose about 7 to 10 plays. And I would say that's at least a drive. Okay. So you take away about 7 to 14 points off the board. So this isn't going to be a high scoring type of game. If anything, I would shift it a little lower just because of the clock rule changes. And now both Penn State and West Virginia can run the ball effectively, to say the least, right? And I think Penn State's going to force some turnovers here. I could see something in the neighborhood of 3, maybe 4 turnovers that just set up Drew Allar in the offense for some short fields and make it a little easier. And a good home opener, good season opener for the Nittany Lions. Keenan, what is your score prediction? How do you think this game unfolds?
Yeah, I think if West Virginia, I mentioned at the top of this, if West Virginia can avoid turnovers, that's a must. They cannot turn the football over in this game. It will not end well for them. And they can run the football and at least keep Penn State's in check. They can make this a game. I think it could go. I think it, the score that keeps going in my head is 34-17. I think the Penn State will win this game. I think West Virginia is going to need a lot of help if they want to come in and win this game. It's just the two teams are hitting each other at the wrong time. This, like you said, if this game happened a few years ago, this is probably be a really, really good game. Yeah. Right now, West Virginia is still trying to rebuild. Penn State is looking at competing for a Big Ten title, and they're opening this game at home. Got a lot of experience returning. I think West Virginia, they feel good. The coaches and the players feel good about what they have. Feeling good about what you have, and then going on the road and beating the number 7 team in the country in their house at night are two different things. So I do think that West Virginia is going to surprise some people. As long as they get out of their own way, I think they're going to surprise some people by how they make this competitive. But I don't think they're going to come out with a win. It would be very hard pressed for me to look at this game and say, all right, West Virginia is going to come in and win this game, because I just don't believe that will happen.
So you have them covering. I mean, that's the important part here, is that the good teams win, great teams cover, Keenan, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think some of that too was, like you said, I think Penn State will be up comfortable enough that they don't necessarily need to pump the pedal late in the game. I think that they'll be content with kind of taking a win like that to open the season. And I think by the end of the year that West Virginia could end up surprising people. This might look back like, I think September for West Virginia is such a huge month. It's a huge month for Neal Brown. It's a brutal schedule, but it really eases up after that. If they can come out of September 2-2, 3-2, going in early October, they could have a chance for a really surprising season. If the wheels come off this thing, then forget everything I said.
Just because I'm curious, Keenan, does Neal Brown finish the season, and does he get a pink slip after the season? Just kind of really quickly.
I think it all depends on how the season unfolds. If this thing goes completely sideways in September, they lose this game, they beat Duquesne, but lose the rest of the games in September, you're heading into that early bye week. Yeah, it wouldn't be that shocking to me. Now, if they can turn it around, win 7 games, 8 games, I think he'll be back.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way Penn State views this game, the 1-0 mentality, I get it. 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. You got to win, or else you don't advance. You really don't. And for Penn State, but you have to think about it. You want to save your best plays for Ohio State, Michigan. You just have some bigger fish to fry. And I think that Penn State understands that, which is why if they get a comfortable lead, as you mentioned, that Penn State is not going to, they don't need to show off in a sense. And I think they have enough to build. They definitely have enough to build that comfortable lead. And that's where those 1 or 2 turnovers in the second half, I think Penn State, Garrett Greene's he better be ready to go, because even though West Virginia's offensive line is as good as it is, Manny Diaz is going to dial up some blitzes. So I hope he's comfortable under pressure.
Yeah, he's got to play good football. If West Virginia wants any chance at all, he has to play good football.
Well, Keenan, I really appreciate this. I'm glad that we were able to preview Penn State, West Virginia. Are you going to be up for the game on Saturday?
Yes, I will.
All right. So you get to see, it is essentially a whiteout. So you can say that you've been to the helmet stripe game, but I definitely encourage you to come back for a whiteout if you haven't seen that atmosphere before. But you're going to get basically what it is similar, since it is the home opener, the season opener. NBC's there, right? The conference is going to have a new look. In West Virginia, Penn State and West Virginia have not played for a long time. Like I said, we're talking about Todd Blackledge's record for the against the Mountaineers, and he played back in the early 80s, right? So Penn State, West Virginia, 7:30 kickoff, September 2nd on NBC at Beaver Stadium. Keenan, I'll be at the game, so hopefully I get the chance to run into you. Before I do let you go, where can people keep up with your work, the podcast that you do, everything for Rivals, so that people can follow along?
Yeah, you can find it over at wvsports.com. We got a lot of coverage over there from West Virginia if you're interested in seeing it from the West Virginia side. My Twitter is at Rivals Keenan, as you can see below. Feel free to hit me up there if you have any questions as well. But once again, Zach, thanks again for having me on here, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Comment your predictions down below. Let us know what you think about this game, and we'll have more Penn State football coverage coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions.